Good morning. My name is John Bacon. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a worship associate of this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland, located on the lands previously inhabited by the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people. Sorry about that, couldn't quite get it out. Also known as the Three Fires Council, which is comprised of the Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Ottawa tribes. It's good to be here with you this morning. Happy lazy Sunday in the summer to all of you, and a happy free cycle excursion to everyone as well, which is happening directly after the service in the parking lot. Be prepared to score some major goodies. We come from different places, religions, beliefs, and backgrounds. Welcome. We come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of our bigger questions. We hope you find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, and know you are welcome here. We especially welcome guests who are worshiping with us for the first time today, either with us physically or joining us online. If you are interested in more information on who we are, we invite you to fill out one of the guest cards in the pew rack in front of you. You can place that card in the offering plate when it comes around later in the service, and we'll be able to reach out to you to answer any questions you might have about our congregation. You can visit the website uucleveland.org or email us if you're watching from an internet platform. We're about to enter sacred space, so please take a moment to silence any noise-making devices and so forth that you happen to have on you. So today our chalice lighter is going to be Mary Schatzman. And if you will follow along with me on the yellow card in your pew, reading our covenant. We cultivate trust with one another by celebrating differences, honoring boundaries, and offering compassion and care. We listen to each other deeply with curiosity and wonder. We speak for ourselves without need to defend ourselves or persuade other people. We create safe and brave space for healthy conflict, creativity, and fun. And we reconcile through forgiving and making amends when we hurt one another.
Good morning. I would agree it feels like a lazy Sunday, but with an entire free cycle and then an entire concert happening this afternoon, we are also a hive of activity, which is very appropriate as we are continuing our summer series on religious naturalism. So I'm glad we can be very hive-like today. What called you here today? Was it this lazy summer sun that pulled you out of bed and into the world? Was it the sound of like an alarm clock, or maybe like the smell of coffee from the kitchen? Was it habit or just familiarity that brought you here? Maybe you're new, and so actually this is something that came with an extraordinary sense of bravery and curiosity to come with us today. Whatever it was, you came here, and somehow you were transformed from a you to an us. And here we are, us. Perhaps there's a deeper magic and a deeper mystery that patterns are coming together today. Community is all around us, even as we gather together to make community today. Is that perhaps what called us here? Something that goes even deeper than DNA, to something even more profound that we share with all the orders of nature. Whether it was coffee or profound mystery, I am overjoyed you are here with us. And as we continue to explore religious naturalism this summer series in Worship and Community, I hope that the spirit of that community, that our ability to commune with another is part of us, as I also ask you to greet one another this morning in neighborly friendship. And as you do that, prepare, because we are going to sing hymn number 1052 in your blue hymnal, The Oneness of Everything. Good morning. So pleased to be here with y'all. A lovely thing. one of the ways that we do community here at UUCC is to bring those things in our lives that are joyous, as well as those things that challenge and struggle and cause us to grief, to this space, to share them together, to commune in our experience of life. If you are joining us online this morning, I would hope that you feel invited to include any of those things that feel ready to be spoken into the world, into the chat online. For the rest of you, I hope that you will feel invited to come and place a stone in the water to acknowledge those joys and concerns that are touching your lives. You know, we do this every week, and for whatever reason today, I'm touched by the treasure of care that I see in the bowl that you've all shared today, an important part of how we do community here. I had a stone, of course, for all of those who are visit with us digitally and shared online. We have your joys and concerns on our hearts as well. And we also add a stone for all of those joys and concerns that are here in spirit, if not in the bowl.
My name is Mary Schatzman. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a member of this congregation's UU Ministry for Earth Committee, which is a great committee. And if your passion happens to be green things, you might want to think about being part of this committee. Anyway, I'm reading today a passage from Suzanne Simard's book, Finding the Mother Tree. She has some really accessible TED Talks, and so in your order of service, there is her name. So if you put that in your pocket and want to check out TED Talks later at home, that's a good reason to hang on to your order of service. So a little context, Suzanne Simard grew up in a family that had logged for decades using fairly sustainable methods. But when she went to work for large logging companies, she became part of clear-cutting operations and worked at their reforestation. She discovered that monoculture planting was less effective at creating new forests, and using sound scientific methods, conducted experiments that showed that some pairings of trees produced stronger trees. Further experiments showed that there were underground networks that trees used to transmit information and nutrients. When presented with this data, both the scientific community and the logging companies ridiculed her and demeaned her scientific work. But she did persist. It took decades for her work to be recognized. When Suzanne Simard discovered What Suzanne Simard discovered was interconnections. In the forest, these interconnections foster growth and health, a good model for us. Humans experience greater health through interconnections. So this is Suzanne Simard's words. I set out on scientific expeditions to figure out where we had gone so very wrong and to unlock the mysteries of why the land mended itself when left to its own devices, as I'd seen happen when my ancestors logged with a lighter touch. The trees soon revealed startling secrets. I discovered that they are in a web of interdependence, linked by a system of underground channels where they perceive and connect and relate with an ancient intricacy and wisdom that can no longer be denied. I conducted hundreds of experiments with one discovery leading to the next. And through this quest, I uncovered the lessons of tree-to-tree communication, of the relationships that create a forest society. The evidence was, at first, highly controversial, but the science is now known to be rigorous, peer-reviewed, and widely published. It is no fairy tale, no flight of fancy, no magical unicorn, and no fiction in a Hollywood movie. One of the first clues came while I was tapping into the messages that the trees were relaying back and forth through a cryptic underground fungal network. When I followed the clandestine path of the conversations, I learned that this network is pervasive through the entire forest floor, connecting all the trees in a constellation of tree hubs and fungal links. Trees perceiving, communicating, and responding to one another by emitting chemical signals. Chemicals identical to our own neurotransmitters. Signals created by ions cascading across fungal membranes. These discoveries are challenging many of the management practices that threaten the survival of our forests, especially as nature struggles to adapt to a warming world. That's the end of her statement. One thing I derive from this is that for humans to relate to the earth as a resource to be exploited leads to destruction, while a worldview that sees the earth as sacred can lead to greater health and wisdom, as well as provide more effective ways to shape our practices to thrive in a changing world.
Today's offertory will benefit the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. The Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless is a coalition of service providers focusing on housing activists, members, people experiencing homelessness. It's called a coalition because it brings together diverse interests from the religious groups to people living on the streets to social service providers with a common goal of finding solutions to homelessness. It's the primary resource for homeless people in Northeast Ohio. For an example of the work they do, Jean Kozmak is doing street outreach at Neosh for 3 years. And Gregory Simon, whose name has been changed, is particularly remarkable. He met Jean at the Days Inn, where he was part of a temporary COVID-19 emergency shelter program. At 36, he'd already spent several years living on the street. And Jean describes Gregory as a funny, kind, and hardworking guy. He was living with both severe mental illness and addiction problems. When he expressed interest in housing in November of 2020, Jean began a housing application with Gregory. Despite meeting weekly, the application took 6 months to complete. The ID and birth certificate he needed for the application had been stolen, and his mental illness made it hard for him to focus. Both factors are an issue for at least 60% of unsheltered folks. Several days after submitting his housing application, Gregory had a psychotic break that led to him flooding his hotel room, resulting in a discharge from his hotel. This left Gregory with nowhere to go but back on the street. However, Jean continued to talk with him weekly on the phone. Eventually, Jean was able to secure a slot for Gregory to move into an Eden apartment. All Gregory had to do was come to one interview with a building manager. After working together for more than a year, Gregory decided not to show up for the housing interview. He told Jean he didn't think he deserved it. Give it to someone else who really needs it, he said. Unfortunately, this caused Gregory to lose his housing opportunity. Still, Jean kept in touch, and after incidents in jail, lack of sobriety, fighting, and finally staying on his meds, he was still unsheltered. Finally, the day came for another housing interview, but Gregory could not be found. Jean searched everywhere, and on the day of the interview, she thought to drive to one of the addresses he had handed out on the application. Someone else answered the door, and after some convincing, he told Jean that if she drove down the block and honked 3 times, she might find Gregory. And sure enough, after 3 honks, Gregory came walking out of the house, hopped in Jean's car, and made it to the housing interview. Gregory is still living in his own apartment today, 2 years, and 3 honks later. Please give generously within your means.
As you may recall, this summer we're doing some new responses to some of our service elements, and today we're going to respond to our offertory with the singing of "From You I Receive." The words are in your bulletin, so please join.
And now please join us all in a minute of silence.
Well, good morning. I realized before, again, because I don't usually have the opportunity, I forgot to introduce myself, because I usually don't start talking until later, and it's just, so anyway. So I'm Allan, Georgia. I'm the Director of Religious Education here. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm thrilled to be talking today about how nature does community, which to me leads me to ask very much an open-ended question of all of you. Like a best of kind of question, thinking and drawing on everyone, I have no doubt, everyone's vast knowledge of David Attenborough, Discovery Channel, National Geographic, PBS, whatever it was, nature documentary. What is your favorite scene? What scene sticks with you of the natural world on film? Any favorites out there? Any favorite moments? Some of these were pretty powerful, pretty memorable from years past. I certainly have a favorite. Yes. The octopus. Tell us about the octopus. If you can name the documentary too, you get an extra point. The human octopus. So the meeting, the animal meeting here is a human and an octopus. Wonderful. Any other big David Attenborough fans? Yes. Elephants mourning their dead. Yes. Grieving elephants. Long memories, right? Others? Yeah. So whales, their yearly migration, dwindling numbers, dwindling whale population. Yeah.
Animals attacking other animals. Tend to be run to start to catch
So, okay, this is because this is a safe space, right? It is okay. We have had this experience where you know this is horrible, but also you're like, I kind of want to see that again. Yeah. Orca fashions. Now that is a fantastic example from things that are going on. Yeah. Right, okay, so that is the one actually I like immediately think of, is because that was like sort of like it was just on commercials and everything. Sorry, so this is the lavish reproductive displays of the birds of paradise. If you recall the very ornate dancing that these birds would do. I believe this was from the Planet Earth series or one of, anyway, David Attenborough for sure. I thought about trying to do a David Attenborough impression, but I'm not gonna, I can't do that. The one that actually I think of a similar mating, it's interesting. Fighting, mating, traveling. Big part of being an animal, it seems. The one I think of though is there's pufferfish, Japanese pufferfish. And to do their own mating process, they have to build this kind of elaborate nest, little like construction project. They have to move the sand around. And the thing that I was always so touched by is that they collect the shells and they decorate. They put their little shells up. And I just thought, that's so creative. It's like a little animal version of HGTV. I feel like there's a real connection here between documentaries like this and for me, of course, thinking back to like Bambi or The Lion King, this instinct we have to take our human experience and to kind of lay it out over the animal world. It's one of those sort of like lenses that we wear. We might not always realize we're doing it, but it's one of those things we can sort of have in place. And this actually happened to me recently in a non-documentary watching context because I was in Cuyahoga Valley National Park, where I went to the Beaver Marsh. Have you been to the Beaver Marsh? Beaver Marsh is amazing, and I keep hoping I will see a beaver. So far, not yet. Just some muskrats and some toads, some herons, a few other animals. Actually, my big celebrity sighting was I saw one of, if you've never had the experience of Dan Homan's carrying around a skunk cabbage. This is a large swamp plant in a pot. And I saw them in the wild. I was like, oh my gosh, I know about you. Dan told me. I also, though, I realized how fenced off and kind of separate the Beaver Marsh is. If you haven't been down there, there's a beautiful walkway and there's sort of a parking lot, and they've clearly made this thriving ecosystem a part of the world, but it's sort of very approachable. And it occurred to me as I was sitting there, again, with David Attenborough in my head, and I was thinking, if you are a squirrel, or certainly if you're a beaver, if you are any piece of wildlife in the Beaver Marsh, this is like the gated community of wildlife. And I just have to imagine that like the beavers are talking to each other and like, oh, you live in the Beaver Marsh. Like la-di-da. How fancy are you? So this is all a roundabout way to pose this hypothetical. If the Beaver Marsh is the gated community of the natural world, who do you think runs the HOA? Who's the HOA manager of the Beaver Marsh? Right? It's a totally, there's no answer to this question. I had a few thoughts. I had a few lines of thinking. One I thought about was actually the muskrats, which I have seen. Because I have to imagine if you're a muskrat in the Beaver Marsh, you feel like you're second tier. Like everyone's there to see that it's not the muskrat marsh, it's the Beaver Marsh. And so you're just not, so there's sort of a resentment that might come from there. My other thought was, the fish have the highest stakes for the state of that particular gated community, because everything is sort of coming in. Like if you're a toad or a crane, you can fly away, you can go elsewhere. But the fish really have a stake in the quality of things, so I thought they might be involved. But then I sort of decided it's probably the cranes that sometimes land there, cranes and herons. And I just feel like if I think about an HOA, I'm always thinking about someone who's standing up taller than everyone else and always just looking, just kind of darting around. I'm doing the thing, right? This is the documentary thing, this is the Disney thing, this is the Bambi thing, this effect, to analogize our human experience into the natural world. I've invented a whole human analogy, a complex suite of emotions that might be part of this particular part of nature. But of course, that's not true. The Beaver Marsh is not a gated community in the natural world. And part of our summer series this year is about evolving a sense of religious naturalism. And I think that naturalism is all about locating and finding a spiritual meaning that derives from our experience communing with nature. And I think to do that, we really have to push past that world. We have to push past the visible version of nature that is so often available to us, either in something like a documentary series from National Geographic, or from something like a wooden pathway that allows me to observe something like the beaver marsh. And of course, there's so much to learn about this. There are intellectual things to know. We heard some of those before. Mary shared extraordinary insights that come from knowledge about the world. What about pushing deeper past knowledge? Past knowledge into something more like mystery. Because I think there's a great deal of mystery in nature if we want to find it. Mystery, something that we can't fully comprehend, we can't fully capture it, and it stretches our mind and our sense of the world. Mystery not as something to be solved, but mystery is something that invites our continued questions. To me, that is something that pulls us past knowledge into a kind of wisdom that maybe is what religious naturalism can offer us. Now, make no mistake, mystery, that's no simple thing. We have to leave the beaver marsh, I think, to start plumbing the mysteries and get that perspective before we can see the beaver marsh in a new way. Especially if we're interested in thinking about how nature does community. There's nothing wrong with the beavers, of course. This is a sight problem of ours we have to solve for ourselves. But to do that, I was thinking we really have to think of something very different, like an edge case. Something that is so extreme, so unusual, that we could find something there. Edge cases are a great place to hunt for mysteries. They take off those Bambi goggles if you can find something that is so unfamiliar, so different. So let's imagine for a moment a different kind of how nature does community. And consider instead an unimaginably different kind of earth, a vastly different version of nature and the models of community in it. I was actually able to share about this a little bit in my online reflection this week. So if you're a careful online reader, first off, thank you. But you'll also be ahead of the curve, because there I was able to talk about stromatolites. Stromatolites. If you get a chance to go back, the images online will give you a sense of what we're talking about. To talk about stromatolites, the phrase living fossil is often going to come up. This is an interesting, strange thing in nature. Sometimes you think a thing is extinct and hasn't been around for a long time, and then it turns out it's still there, which is awkward, obviously. So stromatolites fit into that category, except the thing about stromatolites is that they are so old. They are so much beyond a fossil. It doesn't seem quite right to call them a living fossil. They had their heyday probably about 1.2 billion years ago, after evolving perhaps 2 billion years ago. If you saw them in nature, they would look a little bit like brown coral, but actually they're nothing like coral. They're totally different. They are a community of microorganisms. They are a cooperative coming together of these microorganisms that gather together at the very dawn of creation doesn't even quite capture. This is an entirely different planet. They gathered together to create a community, and the efforts that they involved themselves in 1 billion years ago has completely reshaped the planet, so much so that we wouldn't have a planet if the stromatolites didn't do what they did. You know what the stromatolites community project was? Do you know what their community mission statement was? They oxygenated the earth. They invented photosynthesis, and they oxygenated the earth. They built little microbial condo buildings, and they went about their work. I was just speaking the other day about this kind of act, this willingness to think of the future, the act of hope that it takes to do something in the present that affects the future. In fact, it was Brian calling you out. Brian Larson and I were chatting in the office. And I thought of this phrase about how a society grows great when we plant trees whose shade we know we will not sit in. It's an interesting dynamic, right? This idea of doing something preparatory for the future, because the thing about that, and this is so relevant to the work that we do in this community, is that it brings us and what we are doing, it's a time machine. It captures us and communicates our efforts into this other future time. It wraps us up together. That interdependent web is not temporally linked. It's expansive. And I think that's the sort of thinking that can only happen in meaningful community, because without the understanding of continuity that community provides, how can you imagine a future that others are going to live into? The Stromatolites did that, except instead of planting an orchard or a garden or a tree, they planted a planet that we live in. It's extraordinary to think about the fact that this moment, the Stromatolites coming together, it was sort of the first of its kind, and it was defined by some things that, of course, I think would sound familiar to us, trying to make communities in the world today. They were collaborative, but they were also very aware of their mutual self-interest. They benefited as well as benefiting one another. They were creative, and in the process of their creativity, they reshaped the world around them, so much so that at a certain point, it stopped being so possible to be a stromatolite. And we actually only have them anymore because there's a few handful little pockets in the world where conditions didn't change so much that they could survive and come through. And to me, this is where mystery re-enters the equation. Because to learn that the community work, those dynamics that we are involved in here, are rooted in this thing that's not like old or predates us. It's something that goes so far back as to be foundational to our entire experience of reality. It reshapes how we understand community because it's happening at the scale of something that reminds us both of our immense impact in the world and the smallness that is always with us. I think that experience, that size shift, that awareness of yourself as something gigantic, but also extremely tiny, that is really crucial to understanding religious naturalism. It's allowing yourself to feel the enormity of that, as well as the unbelievable smallness, and to find yourself there together. You know, spirituality doesn't have to be about imagining something sort of gigantic and different that is opposed to us. It can be about understanding ourselves in that giganticness and in that smallness. And the Stromatolites can help us see ourselves that way if we let them. You know, one of the ideas that comes to us from world religious traditions about mystery is the one that's captured in the phrase, in what way does the acorn contain the oak? In what way does the acorn contain the oak? Now, of course, I'm looking at a room full of people I know are scientists. So, I know there's an answer to that question. We didn't always have an answer to that question, but I know there is one, and it has to do with seeds and germination and a whole process. And you're right, by the way. If that's your answer, gold star. That's correct. But also, maybe there's more to it. Maybe there is this deeper mystery in that experience of a thing being contained in a thing, a space being contained in this space. If we look at it the right way and we see it through the right lens, we realize we are the oak that was in the Stromatolites, and at the same time, we are an acorn of a world yet to come. Maybe that's something about how nature does community. Another religious piece of wisdom. Couldn't restrict myself, had to do two, I'm sorry. The other side of mystery is an assumption usually about tapping into a spirituality that is other, a spirituality that is about this thing that is abstract, usually non-physical. It is out there. It is esoteric. It's beyond us. It is other in the most basic sense. But there's another way in which things are mysterious. In traditional theological terminology, we call this term immanence, the immanence of the spiritual world, a way of describing things that are profound, but they're right next to us. So close, in fact, that you can touch it. But it's so overabundant with meaning and interconnectedness that when you touch that thing, when you ponder the mystery deep enough, your act of touching it feels like you're touching yourself. That's the natural world for us. It is spiritual eminence in front of us if we let it be. And if we're focusing on spiritual naturalism this summer, religious naturalism this summer, we are invited to see that spiritual glow all around us. Because nature is absolutely, always, and entirely immanent. That's the great thing about mystery. It doesn't have to be above our heads to be full of mystery. It can be right next to us. I hope that we can contemplate these mysteries a little bit, because it can, in fact, help us reshape how we see ourselves, and especially the community that nature creates, for how we can be with one another, which to me becomes then something prophetic. Because no matter how destructive our ways of life, no matter how stuck and mired we may feel about our own communities, not necessarily this one, but the wider communities that we find ourselves a part of, the natural world outside, in its basic commitment not only to community but to strangeness in community, it reminds us that the world that we have is not necessarily how it has to be. Nature is always there, filling in the gaps and overcoming the walls and creeping through cracks. It grows across chasms. We might be stuck in our ways, but nature is always out there reminding us that this world could look a great deal different. And all I have to do is think about a stromatolite to think about just how big that change can be. And then it reminds us what is perhaps the most profound truth about community. It reminds us that we didn't invent it. A group of Unitarians or Universalists did not gather together and say, you know what, we ought to do a community, and then got together and made one. In fact, it's just the opposite way. We didn't invent community, community invented us. It's older than fossils. We aren't innovators in New World, we are the inheritors of it. And as we think about, of course, the extraordinary problems that face us, and make no mistake, it is not going to be our focus to talk about the doom and gloom realities of the natural world today, but they are going to come up. And those things are very real, and our human communities are wrapped up in those in a big way. So we have to care about that, and we have to consider that. But the fact of doing community, this commitment to gathering and grouping, when we realize it's a premise of the natural world, at least we know what our next step has to be, how we have to lean into community to move forward. So how does nature do community? Nature is community. It's never isolated, and it's never elsewhere. Nature is always immanent. We are communing with it all the time, even right now, in this time and in this place. We are doing community with nature. And in that spirit, I think I have to go to the Beaver Marsh again. I think I have to come to it, though, looking at it through this lens of religious naturalism that I've been describing, because through those kinds of eyes and this idea of immanence and mystery, I think my understanding of that place can now finally move past the National Geographic Bambi goggles that it's so easy to wear, and to find something there. And I need to go, not as just a sort of a day tripper. I need to go ready to commune. And so I offer an invitation if anyone would like to come with me. I have a plan on the calendar. I will announce this, of course, so don't feel like you have to remember it right now. But Saturday is July 22nd. It's next week, not this week. In the evening, I'm going to go to the Beaver Marsh. If anyone would like to come and join, to observe how nature is doing community, and to join into it, I hope in the process we can learn a little bit about how to do us even better. So if you can, if I've whetted your appetite to dig a little into this mystery about communion with nature, I hope you'll join me.
Our closing hymn, our closing song today, is technically in one of our hymn books, but I don't want you to bother with that. I want you to just look at the words that are in the order of service. And to sing this song, I need a little help from my friends. as a different song goes. Like my friend Dylan, who's going to help out with some percussion parts, and my friend Bob, who's going to mind the levels. Dylan's on channel 1 and I'm on channel 6. Okay, and my friends in the choir, and of course all of my friends in the congregation that are right in front of me, and my paper friend, the order of service, that has all the words I need. Here, if Dylan's on number 1, I got to point microphone number 1 somewhere in his direction. A little behind the music here. Okay, that's good. So you can stand as you're willing and able, or you can stay right where you are in the pew. And there are 2 songs here that work individually and also together. And this interconnectedness that we've been digging into today is found right here in these songs that are also, oh, by the way, about nature. So, Dylan, I'm going to ask you to just kind of give us a little musical heartbeat, kind of a doom, dun, doom, and doom. Right, and you can supplement that any way you feel along the way. Keep that going as I talk and sing. So this first song, I'll sing it and the choir will help me, and then you join in when the Spirit moves you. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Once again. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Very good. Here's the other song. It goes like this. Morning breeze, spirit song, sings to me at the break of dawn. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the sea. All together. Morning breeze, spirit song, sings to me at the break of dawn. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the sea. And now we're going to try both songs simultaneously. Everybody over here on the west side, you're going to sing the Ancient Mother part, and everybody over here on the east side of the sanctuary, you're going to sing the Morning Breeze part. Ready? Here we go. Ancient morning. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother. One more time. Ancient morning. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Thank you.
Beautiful. How beautiful was that? A few quick notes as we wrap things up this morning. An obvious thing that I'm sure all of you noticed as you were coming in is today is our free cycle. So there are lots of things going on outside on tables with people who've brought things. So please find yourself there if you would like. Another important thing to note is that the Considering Membership class today is canceled, but it will also be rescheduled. So if you are considering membership, or if you know someone who's considering membership, keep an eye out, because this will be coming back. Of course, the other thing that I hope is not a secret to you all is that today at 1 p.m. is a concert. All the details, of course, are in your order of service. So today is a fantastic day to either have a quick lunch or something locally or here at the building, if you brought something, and to kind of hang out for a wonderful concert later today on the East Lawn. So where we sometimes do outdoor services, that's where the concert will be. What if the world wasn't a problem to solve? What if our experience of the world was a mystery to experience and explore? I think we've heard about some big mysteries today. And I will note that after service today, during our Soul Matters conversations, if you'd like to join me in the library, I hope that you'll join for a chance to talk through some of those big questions about mystery and immanence. For all of us, of course, I hope that we go forth this day not from one community in search of another community in nature. I hope that we go forth in community seeing the shape of us together in the pattern of the earth, finding no words to express fully our gratitude for the immense and joyous mystery that surrounds us.
Please join me in the extinguishing of the chalice, which you'll find on the back of the yellow card in your. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And Allan just mentioned a concert that's happening at 1 p.m. and we have two of the musicians, Moises and Dylan, who are going to be part of that concert, who are going to do our postlude today. Moises, come on up, would you please? And so this is a little sneak preview of the 1 p.m. concert, and this is only one little piece of it. If you come, stay or come back at 1, then you're going to hear Moises and Dylan and two other great professional musicians, and also members of our choir who are going to be singing along on one of the pieces. So should be a really great time. East Lawn, or if it rains, Fellowship Hall. But I think we're going to be okay. So Moises, come on forward. Do you have anything else you'd like to say about the music today? Oh, go ahead.
This is so... Is this on? Yeah, a little bit. So thank you for having us back. This is a great place. I think this might be the best church in Cleveland from what I've seen. Yeah, you know, I was just talking with one of my friends today about how what if learning a little bit about all the religions and bringing them all together is the key to understanding, you know, because that's seemingly the way that that's a form of knowledge, is combining, you know, thoughts and theories and practices from many different cultures. But this is great today. I love everything about mystery because I've been living this recently. And one of the questions, like Mike said about the heartbeat rhythm, somebody had to come up with a rhythm for the first time. So like somebody had to first clap their hands or say or play on a drum. And so it's like, I can't prove it, but in Brazilian music, and that's the beautiful thing, there are some things that you can't prove, but would it really change your life if you could? I don't know. If we really knew, by seeking a beginning and an end to the universe, maybe there was no beginning and maybe there is no end, and like he was saying, maybe we're just experiencing this infinite, you know, realm, and then we're here and we're gone and we're reincarnated possibly as an acorn. But the thing about Brazilian rhythm is that you have this at the basis of a lot of it. And if you slow it down, like I actually bought a stethoscope recently, and if you listen to your heartbeat at the right tempo, it does go boom, 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 boom. It sounds like samba. And then there are many other rhythms that I participate in where the fundamental rhythm is. And so I can't prove it, but it sure seems like our heartbeat had a whole lot to do with the formation of these rhythms and from that initial rhythm. So, yeah, maybe we don't have to prove everything, and by not trying to prove everything, we can actually experience life instead of getting caught up in a question that's possibly unanswerable. You know, so this was great today. I was happy to hear all this. And then I'm here with my buddy Moises, and we're going to play some music for you.
Yeah, put the microphone on your chest like this.
Huh. My heartbeat isn't that strong.
for the percussion. Just don't get tachycardia while we play.
That's right.
So, I want to say thank you to Mike and everyone for having us over today for music and for the concert outside. Also, I want to mention that I'm supposed to bring some of the Brazilian indigenous artifacts that my mom produces in Brazil to do a little fundraiser with her necklaces and bracelets. And they are going through a hard time. And if you guys want to take any of the earrings or anything home, that would be a great help for them, because when these dollars get there, it multiplies by 5. So it's a big deal for them. And the music that I brought today to show you, it's a song written by Janete de Almeida, and it was written in 1945. It's called Pra que discutir com Madame, which means why to enter in a discussion with Madam. And it was recorded by João Gilberto and released in 1986. It was recorded live at the Montreux Jazz Festival. Janete also wrote this song along with Haroldo Barbosa. Well, the lyrics of the song, it's a prose, it's not a poem, and it goes like, why to enter in a discussion with Madam? Madam says that the race does not improve, the life gets worse because of samba. Madam says that samba is a sin, and that samba, the poor thing, should end. Madam says that samba has alcohol, a mix of races, a mix of color, and Madam says that the democratic samba from the people is cheap music with no value. Let's end with samba. Madam does not like anyone to dance samba. She keeps saying that samba is embarrassing, so why to argue with Madam? You know, in the next carnival, I will also compete. In my band from the hill, we'll have to sing an opera then. And on the avenue, in between 1,000 squeezes, you will see people singing a concert with us. Madam has a loose screw on her mind. It only speaks poison. Oh my God, how horrible. The democratic people from, the democratic samba from the people, from the heart of the people, is the one that has good value. So it's like a prose. And the music was arranged by the master creator of the bossa nova, João Gilberto. And it is a bossa nova song, so.
Madame diz que a raça não melhora, que a vida piora por causa do samba. Madame diz que o samba tem pecado, que o samba, coitado, devia acabar. Madame diz que o samba tem cachaça, mistura de raça, mistura de cor. Madame diz que o samba democrata é música barata sem nenhum valor. Vamos acabar com samba, Madame não gosta que ninguém sambe. Vive dizendo que o samba é vexame, pra que discutir com Madame? Vamos acabar com samba, Madame não gosta que ninguém sambe. Vive dizendo que o samba é vexame, pra que discutir com Madame? No carnaval que vem também concorro, meu bloco de morro vai cantar ópera. E na avenida entre 1000 apertos vocês vão ver gente cantando concerto. Madame tem um parafuso a menos, só fala veneno, meu Deus que horror. O samba brasileiro democrata, brasileiro na batata é que tem valor. Madame diz que a raça não melhora, que a vida piora por causa do samba. Madame diz que o samba tem pecado, que o samba, coitado, devia acabar. Madame diz que o samba tem cachaça, mistura de raça, mistura de cor. Madame diz que o samba democrata é música barata sem nenhum valor. Vamos acabar com samba, Madame não gosta que ninguém sambe. Vive dizendo que o samba é vexame, pra que discutir com Madame? Vamos acabar com samba, Madame não gosta que ninguém sambe. Vive dizendo que o samba é vexame, pra que discutir com Madame? No carnaval que vem também concorro, meu bloco de morro vai cantar ópera. E na avenida entre mil apertos, vocês vão ver gente cantando concerto. Madame tem um parafuso a menos, só fala veneno, meu Deus, que horror. O samba brasileiro democrata, brasileiro na batata é que tem valor. Madame diz que a raça não melhora, que a vida piora por causa do samba. Madame diz que o samba tem pecado, que o samba, coitado, devia acabar. Madame diz que o samba tem cachaça, mistura de raça, mistura de cor. Madame diz que o samba democrata é música barata sem nenhum valor. Vamos acabar com samba, Madame não gosta que ninguém sambe. Vive dizendo que o samba é vexame, pra que discutir com Madame? Vamos acabar com samba, Madame não gosta que ninguém sambe. Vive dizendo que o samba é vexame, pra que discutir com Madame? No carnaval que vem também concorro, meu bloco de morro vai cantar ópera. E na avenida entre mil apertos, vocês vão ver gente cantando concerto. Madame tem um parafuso a menos, só fala veneno, meu Deus, que horror. O samba brasileiro democrata, brasileiro na batata é que tem valor. Thank you. Thank you. We'll be playing a bunch of songs like that and other sambas today at the lawn. We're starting at 1 p.m. and Dylan's going to be playing with me along with Gary April on bass. And we have Chris Burge on saxophone. So we're excited about that. It's going to be really good, really good. I really hope to see all you guys there and enjoying some music and looking at some beautiful Brazilian indigenous artifacts that's produced by my mom and her friends at the indigenous tribe where they live in Brazil. I'll see you guys then a little later. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you.